And this being Father's Day, we can laugh, but being a parent, being a grandparent, being an aunt, being an uncle, we all know that times might change, but kids are always going to be challenging. And so I am bound by the pastoral code. I have to talk about Father's Day today, and hopefully we'll talk about some of the things that we can do to just influence and raise the kids in our lives. And I joked earlier that you have to decipher what kids say, but men aren't any different, right, for fathers. I mean, like, if a guy says, it would take me just way too long to explain. That means, I don't know, right? If a guy says, honey, that's not what I meant, he means, if something can be interpreted two different ways, and one of those ways makes you mad, I meant the other way, right? If a guy says, I couldn't find it, that means when he walked into the room, it didn't land into his outstretched hand, right? If a guy says, take a break, honey, you're working too hard, that means, I can't hear the TV over the vacuum cleaner. And if a guy says, sure, honey, that means nothing, because he didn't hear you. But the ladies know that, so they counter, and they say, did you hear me? And then your man will say, I heard you. But what that means is, I still have no clue what you said, but I'm going to fake it. Because if I don't, then you're going to tell me for 3 days how I never listened to you. There's a really wonderful wisdom proverb that says, train up a child in the way he should go, and even when he is old, he will not depart from it. And we love kids, right? We love the kids in our lives, and you could do everything by the book. And those same kids will eventually one day, they'll walk down their own road, right? Or they'll turn out exactly like you expected. Or they'll follow after friends that you didn't really approve of. And somewhere in there, as they're growing up, you'll think, well, didn't I train up this child in the way they should go? And why did they go a different direction? And for as much as we would like to blame the times that we live in, or popular culture, or the media, or the language barrier, I wonder, as people who raise children, do we really know the way to go? And if we do, is that the way that we are going? In other words, are we leading our children by our example? Because Solomon says, train up a child in the way he should go. Okay, Solomon, what's the way, right? And I've honestly, my whole life, I've never really given Father's Day a whole lot of thought, which gets me into a lot of trouble because that means I don't give Mother's Day much thought. And this year, Joanna was sad that our 6-month-old did not buy her a card. And I said, how is Dermot going to get you a card? Oh. Paul gives some great advice in Ephesians about parenting, and we looked at this a little bit last Mother's Day. Ephesians 6:1-4 says this, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise, that it may go well with you and that you may live long in the land. And then it goes on and it says this for fathers. It says, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. And raising kids, it's not easy. It's an incredible challenge. It has incredible pain, it has incredible joy, and we could do no better thing for our kids in our lives than to personally walk in the way that we should go, to be mature in our faith, and to be open to the continually transforming power of Jesus Christ. And Paul says, do not provoke, do not exasperate your children, do not break your promises to them, do not neglect them, do not also mindlessly indulge every whim of theirs, do not neglect them. And then he says, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. So Father's Day now, for me, is this huge reminder of the even huger responsibility that I have for the children that are in my life, because I have my own definition of what a father is in my head, and it's not a small thing. For me, a father lives a godly life. How does he do that? He must keep his promises concerning his relationship to the Lord, his relationships with his family, and his relationships with other people. He must be mature in the faith, be the spiritual head of the family that God has called him to be. A father must commit himself to building a strong biblical marriage with his wife and really support the mission of Christ Church with his time, his talent, and his prayer. That's all. Just that. And this is the best thing that we can do for the kids in our life. And if is for each one of us to personally be right with God and to walk with the Lord, to never be satisfied, but continually seek out to be transformed by the image of God's Son. And to be honest, that is a lifetime of work, right? That definition, that'll be your journey for the rest of your life. And so you got to look at all of that and say, okay, where do I start? Because I think we can start by just being a blessing to our families. So this morning, we're going to look at the 27th chapter of Genesis. So if you'd like to follow along, that is where we will be in Genesis 27. It's the story of Isaac bestowing the blessing to Jacob. And of course, if you know the story, the blessing was intended for the oldest son, Esau, but through deception, and the blessing was given to Jacob instead. So as you may remember, Isaac and Rebekah, they had twin sons, Jacob and Esau, and they weren't anything alike. They were not the typical twins that look alike and dress alike. Esau was an outdoorsman. He had hairy arms. He wore flannel shirts. He drove a pickup truck. He had a shotgun, and he did all the trifecta, did fishing and deer hunting and what's the other one? Fishing, hunting, and there's another one. Yeah, see? And so he was obviously from Texas. And then Jacob was more of a homebody. You know, he wore pastels, and he spent a lot of time indoors with his mom doing the dishes. And so he was probably from Los Angeles. And that's a joke, because if you don't know, I'm from Los Angeles. See, I was just teasing. They always tease me, and so I'm just playing along with it. In the 27th chapter of Genesis, their father, Isaac, he's gotten old, he's gotten blind, and he decides that it's time now that he's going to pass his blessing on to his oldest son. Now, a Jewish father's blessing was the formal delegation of the father's leadership and all of his authority, and he's placing that onto his son. And since the oldest son is assuming the leadership and all the responsibilities for the family, what he then gets is a double portion of his father's blessing. So the bestowing of the blessing, big, huge importance. And so in verse 2, Isaac tells Esau, "Behold, I am old, I do not know the day of my death. Now then, take your weapons, your quiver, your bow," it's probably a compound crossbow, "and go out into the field and hunt game for me, and prepare for me delicious food such as that I love, and bring it to me so that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die." So Esau leaves, okay? He leaves, and while he's gone, Rebekah, his mother, seizes the opportunity to secure the blessing for Jacob, the younger son, who was her favorite. So she quickly prepares some food that she already had, and she tells Jacob to wear Esau's clothes, because remember, their father's blind. They're going to try to pull a fast one on him to help fool him. And so what she does is some of the goat skin that she had just killed, she takes that and she superglues it to the back of his hands to make him feel like a hairy guy. And then she sends him in to ask for the father's blessing. And then look at verse 19. Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn." So he's lying. He says, "I have done as you have told me. Now sit up and eat of my game, that your soul may bless me." And then in verse 20, but Isaac said to his son, "How is it that you found it so quickly, my son?" "Because the Lord your God granted me success." Then in verse 21, Isaac says to Jacob, "Please come near, that I may feel you, my son, to know whether you are really my son Esau or not." So Jacob went near to his father, Isaac, who felt him and said, "The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau." And he did not recognize him, because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands, so he blessed him. And so the blessing is found then in verses 27 through 29. And it says, "So he came near and kissed him, and Isaac smelled the smell of his garments and blessed him and said, 'See, the smell of my son is the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you the dew of heaven and of the fatness of the earth and plenty of grain and wine. Let people serve you, nations bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you.'" Now, even though it was wrong for Jacob to steal this blessing, I do want to show you that the blessing that Isaac gives contains 4 different ingredients that ought to be present in all of our homes today. And when those 4 ingredients are present and when they're practiced consistently, then our children will grow up solid and secure and confident in themselves, able to go out into the world and to function normally. So let me show you what these 4 ingredients are. And the first one is, it's a meaningful touch. A meaningful touch. If you notice in verse 22, Jacob went near to Isaac his father, and he felt him. And verse 26 says, then his father Isaac came near and kissed him. And this is not an isolated incident in Scripture. Almost every time you see a blessing bestowed in Hebrew culture, it involves the laying on of hands, a kiss, and probably a hug or an embrace. And all that does is it just conveys acceptance and it conveys love. And if you look at the 10th chapter of the Gospel of Mark, it says that people brought little children to sit on Jesus' knee and so that he could touch them and bless them. And Jesus knew exactly that children need to feel loved and accepted. So he touched them and he blessed them. And studies show that human touch lessens pain. Mothers know that, right? Just you kiss boo-boos and then pain goes away, right? Children need that to feel accepted. Touch actually improves pulmonary function. It lowers your blood glucose and improves your immune functions. In fact, newborns that are touched more, they gain weight faster, and they have a superior mental and motor skill in their developing, and they retain that for months as they're growing up. If you touch a little baby on the back and their legs, it soothes them. But if you touch them on their face or their belly or their feet, it excites them. In the earliest stages of a child's life, touch is very crucial, and it establishes a bond between the parent and the child, especially when verbal communication is kind of out the window, right? You have to use touch to convey love and acceptance. And the problem is, human touch is important for all ages. But it seems as we get older, human touch lessens and lessens. In fact, by the time children reach their teenage years, now they say that they receive half as much touching as a teenager than they did when they were a baby. And then as we get older and older, well, then it just turns into handshakes, right, and high fives. Jacob was 40 years old when Isaac touches him and kisses him and gives him this blessing. So no matter your age, no matter how old your children are, personal contact, a handshake, a hug, a kiss, an embrace, it's important. It communicates love. It communicates acceptance. So that's our first ingredient, a meaningful touch. The second one is words of affection. Listen as he blesses his son in the last part of verse 27. He says, see, the smell of my son is the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. Now, I suppose that today, your kid wouldn't consider it a compliment if you told him that he smelled like a field, right? I just want you to know that. You smell like grass. But when Joanna tells Declan that he smells like the outside, that's code. It means, I want you to take a bath, right? But if you're an outdoorsman like Isaac, who thought he was speaking to his son Esau, who's also an outdoorsman, the smell of a field about ready to harvest is a great smell. It was a compliment. He's a positive message, and he's communicating that same love and acceptance in his son. And it's communicating a powerful, affectionate phrase. Words of affection and endearment, words of true, honest, justified praise, words that give positive guidance, they all say, you know what, I care about you. And they nurture a child's inner sense of security and their feelings of worth. A child reaps all the benefits of words spoken to them their entire life. And I think a lot of us, I come home from work and I'm already tired, and then so it seems like your first words are critical, like about how the house is messy and how the kid's nagging you because he wants you to play Legos with him in his room. I'm sure that's just me. And but words of criticism, they don't accomplish all that much. In fact, most of the time they help your children withdraw. I think there's room for constructive criticism, but it's more important that we communicate our love through our words and say, you know what, you're valuable to me. You're worth something to me. I'm glad God gave you to us. You're the best present I could have ever gotten. These are words that communicate acceptance and love, and they need to be spoken over and over and over again. Even when our children stumble, and even when they fall, even when they fail us, don't wait, don't hesitate to shower them with praise. The third ingredient is to assure them of their value. Notice what Isaac says in verse 28. He says, "May God give you the dew of heaven and of the fatness of the earth and plenty of grain and wine." He's saying you're special. So God will give you the best that he has to give. And it's especially important to teach that to our children, to say that, you're so valuable that God came to this world to die on a cross for you. And it's not just by words. We teach this in a whole number of ways. A lot of times when a child comes into the room, we're busy. And we have one eye on the TV and one eye on them. Or we have both eyes on the computer screen. I'm guilty of that. I say, yeah, I'm in a minute. And because we can't even concentrate for 2 seconds, right, on what they're trying to say. And so if a child comes into the room to talk to you, turn to face them or turn the TV off or lower the laptop lid and listen to what they have to say. When before I came here, I used to work at Disneyland. And so I got questions all day long from parents, of course. But once in a while, I would get questions from little kids. And they have the greatest questions because they want to know they don't care about when the fireworks start. They want to know about Mickey Mouse and they want to know about things like that. And so our supervisors always told us that if a child comes up to you to talk to you, you get down on one knee and you look them in the eye. And it's just something that I've continued to do. And they said when you do that, you're showing them value and worth. That you're not bending over to them like this, but that you're kind of meeting them on their level, And it's just a way of saying, I'm not living up here right now, where all the adults are. I'm getting down and I'm living where you are. And it's just a way of saying you're worth something. You're more important than the ball game, or you're more important than Facebook, and you're a member of this family, and I value you. And so whenever you have something that you need to talk about, you can trust that I'm going to listen to that. The fourth ingredient is the picture of a wonderful future. In verse 29, Isaac says to Jacob, "Let people serve you and nations bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you." So Isaac is helping his son raise his sights and to see that he has a bright future ahead of him. That's an important responsibility for parents. And if you remember our verse from Proverbs 22, train up a child in the way they should go, and even when they are old, they will not depart from it. And we've always kind of made the spiritual application there, teach them the things of God, and when they're old, then they won't forsake them, right? But there's another application here, in that we're also to help our children find their niche, to discover who they are, to discover why they've been made. And so as they're growing up, we should help them understand their gifts and their talents and find out what they are best suited for in life. So we counsel them, we guide them to become the kind of person that God wants them to be. And we don't want to make the mistake some parents make that, we try to get our kids to become who we want them to be, or we try to get them to become little versions of us. And I wonder how many people have tried to force their child into something and to become something that God never equipped them for, or God never intended them to be. Our responsibility as guides are to help them see for themselves who they really are and to help prepare them for a glorious future. I think this is the mortar that holds that together. It's just a meaningful touch, a spoken message, assuring them that they have value, and giving them a picture that they have a bright future ahead. If you look at Psalm 127, it says, "Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord, the fruit of the womb a reward." Children are given to us to enjoy, not to be a burden, not to avoid, not to ignore, but to enjoy. And in order to enjoy them, we've got to be with them, right? And have fun with them and enjoy our lives with them. So we give them our time. Enjoy being a parent. Make sure that they enjoy having you as their parent. Maybe it's too late to spend time on the floor with them and give them horsey rides or take them to fun places and do things, but my dad and I, we still talk and we still laugh and play. we still talk about the memories of growing up, and we still remind each other that the other person is fun to be around. Proverbs 23 says, "The father of the righteous will greatly rejoice. He who fathers a wise son will be glad in him." You are preparing your children, hopefully, to leave home if they haven't already left. Hope, right? Someday, please. And maybe then I get to go to Egypt. I don't know. So, but they're going to take what they've learned from you, and they begin to play around with that in the real world. And we've only got 18 years approximately just to get them ready. But preparing them for the life away from you, that's only a part of the picture. The truth is, God didn't give you kids so that you could create a doctor or a teacher or a plumber. God gave you children so that you could prepare them for eternity. And you can't choose the career that they're going to pick. If you went to the Madeley Ranch and you watched their kindergarten graduation, we're going to have an onslaught of veterinarians like nobody's ever seen. Every kid's going to be a veterinarian or a cowboy. But we want to prepare them for something better than that. We want to prepare them for eternity. And I know it's not easy being a good parent, but it's also not impossible. And it does take work, and it does take praying, and it does take hard decisions, but just don't forget that you're not in this alone, that God is there with you, and God doesn't expect you to go through this alone. God doesn't want you to go through this alone. So don't ever leave God out of your parenting. Pray for your families. Pray for your spouse. Pray for your kids, and let your kids see you praying. If we're going to train them up in the way they should go, they need to see us as examples, that as adults that pray too, right? And they need to hear our prayers for them. I don't know of a more precious time in my day than when you're putting your child to sleep and they can hear your prayers for them. Remember, it's our duty to train our children up in the way that they should go. And so we just need to show them the way. Let's pray.